Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I trust you had a great weekend. Dad was visiting, so we had grandfather around. That was fun. Got around a little bit and enjoyed ourselves thoroughly. I wrote the following over the weekend. The markets are never wrong, President Paul Kagame said. The markets are never wrong, President Paul Kagame said in an interview in Washington on August 9 at the US-Africa Summit. There was no sharper signal delivered in Washington than those 5 words that President Kagame uttered. Picking up the signal through the noise of our world in 2014 is no easy thing. In fact, my view is the new normal is a very arrhythmic world. When I plugged arrhythmia into my computer, it threw up this. For years he'd been studying the phenomenon of chaos, of which an arrhythmic heartbeat was a perfect example. His Excellency Johann Borgstam told me the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal was the disappearance of the MH370. Since then, planes have been falling out of the sky like flies, and the uncertainty around MH370 and MH17, which uncertainty is sharpened by the way the story is seemingly turned on and off, took me back to Don DeLillo. We are not witnessing the flow of information so much as pure spectacle, or information made sacred, ritually unreadable. The small monitors of the office, home and car become a kind of idolatry here, where crowds might gather in astonishment. The Ebola virus continues to gain velocity, and the World Health Organization, in their latest release, dated August the 22nd, announced that the magnitude of the Ebola outbreak has been underestimated, and of the existence of an invisible caseload of patients who are not being detected by the surveillance system. WHO spoke of the existence of numerous shadow zones. NATO has thrown out a whole new characterization of warfare called ambiguous warfare. Eastern Ukraine has become a shadow zone. And then, of course, the beheading of James Foley by a jihadist with a British accent went viral. There was a spookiness about the British accent which spoke to centuries of received history. IS and the likes of Al-Shabaab have proven accomplished and frightening and frightful exponents of the new 21st century digital ecosystem. And what is so fascinating is that their media efforts all point west. The richest hunting ground for these new 21st century serial killers stroke terrorists is among the disaffected in the Western world. It is clear that the surveillance system was switched off, because then these ne'er-do-wells were doing the dirty work of toppling Muammar and trying to topple Bashar. The indigènes are apparently bit players. Last week, we learned from the Pentagon that the US government filed a formal complaint with China about the near miss between a Chinese J-11 fighter jet and a Navy Poseidon P-8 patrol aircraft 135 miles east of Hainan Island. Kirby said the Chinese fighter jet brought one of its wingtips within 20 feet of the Poseidon, performed a barrel roll at close range, and also flashed past the nose of the US aircraft at a 90-degree angle with its underside exposed, apparently to make a point of showing its weapons. Now, given this new level of arrhythmia, friction, and a kind of unsettling ambiguity, how are we to navigate the financial markets? You see, the old days, these conditions would have created a flight into the dollar. And interestingly, the dollar has been punching higher, and if things tip big, the dollar might soar. I look forward to hosting Dennis McCory, the CEO of OnFon Media, at Mindspeak this Saturday. We host Mindspeak at the Intercontinental. We serve breakfast from 9:30. We start at 10 a.m. It is a free-to-attend forum. Do register on the site so that in the future we can put you on the email list. We've had some fabulous guests this year. Those links are up on the website, including Christine Lagarde. It was a real pleasure catching up in person with Andrew Rugasira, whom I met in Maputo. He is the CEO of the Good African Company and a very, very erudite and fascinating man. Thank you, Andrew. Most enjoyable it was. My home thoughts start with Dreams in a Time of War by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Years later, when I read T.S. Eliot's line that April was the cruelest month, I would recall what happened to me one April day, 1954, in Chile, Limuru, and I live not far from Chile, Limuru, and it is Chile. The prime estate of what, in 1902, another Eliot, Sir Charles Eliot, then governor of colonial Kenya, had set aside as White Highlands. The day came back to me, the now of it, vividly. He was caught, then it jumps to this young boy overhearing a conversation. He was caught red-handed, some were saying. Imagine, bullets in his hands, in broad daylight. Everybody, even we children, knew that for an African to be caught with bullets or empty shells was treason. He would be dubbed a terrorist, and his hanging by the rope was the only outcome. We could hear gunfire, some were saying, and I saw them shoot at him with my own eyes, but he didn't die. Die? Bullets flew at those who were shooting. No, he flew into the sky and disappeared in the clouds. Political Reflections, Breedlove is talking of a blitzkrieg scenario. He's going to present that scenario at NATO's summit in Wales in early September, according to the London Times. And then this caught my attention. Whisper it in Washington, but Putin may have been right about Syria all along. He wrote some months ago in the New York Times op-ed, Syria is not witnessing a battle for democracy, but an armed conflict between government and opposition in a multi-religious country, he wrote, suggesting that the nominally secular Assad regime, despite its misdeeds, was a stabilizing force preferable to what could possibly replace it. And interestingly, this is never discussed, actually. If you look back at nearly every intervention, what has come after has been significantly worse than what was before. Putin decried the growing Islamist cadres in the Syrian rebels' ranks, mercenaries from Arab countries fighting there, hundreds of militants from Western countries and even Russia are an issue of our deep concern. Might they not return to our countries with experience acquired in Syria? According to The Independent, an obvious first step would be to close the jihadis' highway, the point at which jihadis should be best identified, intercepted and stopped is not within Britain or even Europe, but as they cross from Turkey into Syria. The Turks have a 560-mile border with Syria, and it is across this that jihadis must travel if they are to reach their destination, primarily, but not exclusively, the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. Those who head for Iraq must also take what Turkish journalists call the jihadist highway, a network of roads across Turkey and Syria. Turkey, of course, has had an open-door policy. The Turkish government protests that it gets 34 million tourists a year and cannot arrest everybody with a beard. Hissan Zivi tweeted this photograph in front of a crowd outside a mosque. Hamas kills 18 suspected collaborators in Gaza. And then there was another photograph, one of the executions today in Gaza by Hamas. Both sort of captured my attention. The whole thing around collaboration. I don't know if you've ever seen The Battle of Algiers, a magnificent movie about resistance, these sorts of circumstances. Normandy, 6 June 1944, very iconic Robert Capa photo of the D-Day landing. Came across it again over the weekend. I thought I'd look at it. Now, coming to the currency markets, the euro's at 131.91. Dollar rose as high as 131.84, which was the strongest since September the 9th last year. Dollar index, as I've been saying last week, is looking very muscular indeed. 82.56, Japanese yen 104.13. The dollar has rallied for 6 consecutive sessions against the yen. Swiss franc 0.9168, pound 165.68, Aussie 0.9315. That's reasonably firm given the strength of the dollar. Indian rupee 60.46, South Korean won 1020.34, Rial 227.65, Egyptian pound 715.12, South African rand 1069.94. The dollar has gained 1.5% in the past month, and that should be considered in the context of what I was saying in my weekly piece. And it's the second best performer after Norway's krona. Dollar index, I'll put up a 1 month chart. You can see it's flying high. 84.50 is next key level on this index. It's posted 6 consecutive weekly gains. Euro dollar, this is breaking down. Look at the 1 month chart, 131.91 last September 2013 lows. Gold, I'll put up a 1 month chart. I think it's going to struggle to make headway in the face of a stronger dollar. 1277.75, 1240, 1250 my objective. Crude oil, which really got slammed over the last 6 weeks, now at $93.68. I think the sell-off has been overdone, frankly. This is interesting. According to the investment grade Scotch Index, published by Whisky Highland in Tain, Scotland, the top 100 single malts delivered an average return of 440% from the start of 2008 till the end of July this year. That compares with a 31% gain in S&P 500 stocks and a 2% drop in the LivX 100 benchmark fine wine index. The holy grail, I learned from this article, which is very well written, of Japanese whiskies is the Karuziwa 1960. Released in 2013, only 41 bottles were produced after 52 years of aging in the cask, and each cost about £12,500. It has an aroma of scented wood, dark chocolate, orange peel, citrus and honey, and tastes of pepper, malt, orange marmalade and licorice, according to Chan, who tried it at an exclusive 12-person sampling at the Old Alliance Whiskey Bar in Singapore. Coming to sub-Saharan Africa, Mozambique's Frelimo government and the Renamo main opposition party have signed a formal end to hostilities, sealing a peace pact ahead of a presidential election scheduled for October 15. The accord, which is expected to be ratified by Dhlakama and Gwebuza, is in a public ceremony in coming days, foresees the demobilization of Renamo's fighters and their integration into the National Army and Police, a process that will be overseen by foreign military observers. It will allow Dhlakama to leave his bush base in central Sofala province and begin campaigning for the October 15 election. The constitution bars Gwebuza from running for a third term. I'll put up a photograph I took 86 days ago on the very same day that I met Andrew of the Good Earth Coffee Company. Maputo evening. It was beautiful, and as you looked out towards the Indian Ocean, and I couldn't help thinking of Fernandez Armesto and his reversible escalator monsoon wind, and my family that ended up coming from Gujarat and then getting off in East Africa, whereas they could have come all the way. And on the 3rd of June, when I visited Maputo, I wrote a piece, Mozambique could be the next Qatar. Do have a look at that if you're interested. And I'll put up a photograph of Samora Machel, the statue of him in the Praça de la Independencia in Maputo, which I took 812 days ago. South African all shares up 10.681% this year. Dollar rand just near 1070. I'll put up a 1 month chart, but remember we're in this range which is 1030 to 1095 area. Egyptian pound, where it's been for eternity, 715.10. The Egyptian stock market multi-year highs, up 39.899% this year, second only to Dar es Salaam, which is up 50%. Nigerian all shares up marginally for the year, up 0.568%. The Economist, and there's been a lot of stories about the African demographics, is saying that Nigeria's population is likely to overtake America's by 2045. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 3.0769% this year. However, we learned the Bank of Ghana said the yield on its 91-day T-bill rose to a fresh 4-year high of 55.0241%. from 24.9903% at the last sale. The bank said it accepted all 705.29 million cedis worth of bids, so they are very short of money. The World Health Organization has said the speed and extent of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa is unprecedented. The WHO's Dr. Keiji Fukuda expressed concern over so-called shadow zones, areas which cannot be reached and where patients are not being detected. And I wrote about this, that piece I wrote last weekend when I said, viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. And there's a link on the website as to why the Ebola outbreak has been underestimated. Lots of interesting reasons. Families hide infected loved ones in their homes. Others deny a patient has Ebola. Fast-moving outbreaks creating challenges for the many international partners. Many treatment centres and general clinics have been closed. Fear keeps patients out and causes medical staff to flee. In parts of Liberia, a phenomenon is occurring that has never before been seen in an Ebola outbreak. As soon as a new treatment facility is opened, it is immediately filled with patients, many of whom were not previously identified. This phenomenon strongly suggests the existence of an invisible caseload of patients who are not being detected by the surveillance system. And that's what I was worried about, that it's massively undercounted. And I said that I err on the side of a massive undercount in the matter of Ebola, and I said that a few days ago. The human species has existed in something like our present form for approximately 200,000 years. Such a long run should itself give us confidence that our species will continue to survive, at least insofar as the microbial world is concerned. Yet, such optimism, wrote the Ehrlich Prize-winning former chair of zoology at the University College of London, might easily transmute into a tune whistled while passing a graveyard. In the DRC, the health minister Felix Kabange Numbi said an Ebola outbreak had been confirmed in the remote northern Equator province. There have been 6 outbreaks of Ebola in DRC since the disease was discovered there in 1976, with a total of more than 760 deaths. Equator province is 1,200 kilometers from the capital, Kinshasa, but it's a different strain of the virus from the West African one, apparently. Standard Group reported first half profit before tax down 7.317%. Revenues were up 1.5%. Earnings per share 2.68 versus 2.92 last. From the commentary, we learned print advertising business grew by 12% over the same period last year. Television broadcasting declined marginally. Radio business up 50%. Digital revenues up 82%. Kenya port traffic up 5% as container unit ahead of schedule. Gives us a good perspective on what's happening in the region. Mombasa port may handle 5% more cargo this year. Construction of a second container terminal running ahead of schedule. Throughput may climb to 23.5 million metric tons in 2014 from 22.3 million metric tons last year. Tonnage rose 13% in the 6 months through June from a year earlier. Of course, Mombasa handles the trade for Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan and the DRC. I'll put up a photograph of Mombasa Island taken on Boxing Day, 241 days ago. Safaricom's M-Pesa agents earned total commissions of 10.6 billion shillings in the year to March 2014, equivalent to nearly half, 40% of the mobile monies platform's revenue. Agents' take-home grew by a quarter, from 8.5 billion in 2013, driven by an increase in M-Pesa subscribers and a surge in the average number of transactions per customer. Safaricom generated 26.5 billion shillings in revenue from the M-Pesa service last year. Safaricom share price data is up on rich wrap-ups, and just to give you some data, full year revenue was 144.67 billion shillings, that was up 16.4%. M-Pesa revenue was 26.5 billion shillings, up 21.61%, increased by 22%. Kenya shilling is at this key level of 88.36. It's bounced off this previously. We've got to keep a very close eye. The Nairobi All Share is up 14.474% this year. NSE 20 is up 2.0706% this year, and it's been above 5,000 every session since the 5th of August. I was talking about the shilling on Friday, saying it's clear that hard currency tourism receipts have slowed, and I got first-hand evidence of this when I was in Diani, and there was exactly one international tourist in the hotel. And that is, I think, in part why we're seeing the softening up. But bear in mind that the price of crude oil has fallen dramatically, and therefore we won't need so many dollars at the next round of crude oil buying. The markets remain well supported. I think there is a second half rally, which might have already begun just over the horizon, and I think we should look for that. Once again, thank you for stopping by.